All right, in this video, we're going to start our users module implementation. So we're going to start off in our server and jump into our modules users class, or users modules class rather. And we're going to begin by allowing the user to, or the client rather, to request a list of users. And we're going to fill up a basic array of users with a bunch of fake users. And we're going to kind of do that first. And then when we allow users to log in and log out, then we'll start worrying about adding and removing users from the list. But for now, what we're basically going to do is once the user's store, which we haven't stubbed out yet, that's on the client. Once the user store starts, it's going to say every time you connect to the server, request a list of users. And that's the that's the code we're going to implement here. So we're going to start off by creating a fake list of users. That sounds like fun. And to do that, I need to implement a method that's going to color users based off a hash of their username. So let's implement that. Let's implement getColor for username with username. And the first thing we're going to do is calculate a hash. So I'm going to go ahead and just say hash. I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to import lodash. I'm going to say import underscore from lodash. And I'm going to say hash equals lodash reduce on username. And then I'm going to say hash char goes into char at char code at 0 plus hash shifted to the left by 6 plus hash shifted to the left by 16 minus hash and then 0. 0 is going to be the final parameter to reduce, which is the starting hash. So this is just a really basic hash algorithm. It's not important to understand the details here. I just know that it makes hashes that are good enough for me to color usernames based off of. So you can just pull that out. All it's going to give us back is a number that is going to be representative of the user's username. And it's going to be different for most users, and it's going to vary widely based off of subtle changes of the user. So it's a very, very simple, naive hash function. Not particularly interesting, but what is interesting is how we're going to use that hash in order to generate a color. So this is really cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a const hue equals math absolute hash and then 360. So you might see where I'm going with this. Let's do the next one. We'll do saturation equals math abs hash. Actually, we can math abs hash earlier. I'm going to say let hash, and then I'm going to say hash equals math abs hash. So we just get the absolute value of the hash, and we don't have to math abs hash on everything. So saturation equals hash modulo 25 plus 70. And then lightness equals 100 minus hash modulo 15 plus 35. Most of these numbers are just arbitrary numbers that don't really matter, but they do produce very good colors. And before I tell you exactly what's going on here, I'm going to finish it off with the last line of code, which is return HSL hue, comma, saturation percentage, comma, lightness percentage. So we're going to be injecting this right into a HTML element, and all modern browsers understand the hue, saturation, lightness format. It's different than RGB in that instead of describing a color as red, green, or blue, we describe colors as hue, saturation, and lightness. And the reason that's cool is because we can control the lightness of the color, the value of the color, which makes us able to consistently produce colors that will look good on a given background, be it the background is white or it's dark. So these colors will be fairly light and they'll appear very nice on a dark background. But you could also do the opposite and make it appear very nice on a light background as well. So of course hue is a number between 0 and 360, which is just the location on the color wheel of what color to pick. And we just take the hash and modulo 360. Saturation is how saturated that color is. We modulo it by 25, but then we add 70 to always make sure it's fairly saturated. And then the lightness, of course, is, well, the lightness. We modulo the hash by 15, force it to be 35, and then we subtract 100 from that. So that's how we get a color for a username. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a fake user list. Up here in the constructor, I'm going to say underscore user list equals array of, let's just make this simple. Name, foo, color is this, get color for username, foo. And then we can do another couple bar, baz, and get the color for bar and baz. Obviously, you wouldn't do this in production. The user list is going to be controlled by who's logged in and who's logged out, but, well, we don't have that functionality yet. So as a result, we are just going to make it like that. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to find a way for the user, or allow the user to ask the user module, or the users module, for a list of users. So I'm going to implement the register client method. Remember, the register client method is invoked on this module and every other module whenever a user connects to the socket.io endpoint. I think actually what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to take this register client and I'm going to stick it at the bottom. I actually think that it's a little bit cleaner to have all of our other methods up at the top and then at the bottom our register client, because it's a sort of isolated thing that I don't want to be taking up a lot of vertical screen space. I'm also going to do something else interesting. And that is, I'm going to add a method to our observable socket. Remember, the client is an instance of observable socket, where we do something like client on action users list, and then do something, right? I want to do something a little cooler than that, though, because there are going to be multiple actions that the user can perform on this module. So let's go ahead and jump into our source shared observable socket. And what I'm going to do is, you'll see where I'm going with this once I implement it. Where are you? Okay, so after on action, but before emit error, I'm going to do something cool. I'm going to write an on actions that takes in an actions object. And I'm going to say for let action in actions, not of actions, because it's not iterable. If not actions has own property, action, continue. This on action, action, actions, action. That's a lot of action. Make sure that you pluralize everything properly. What I'm doing here is I'm making it so that you can actually register multiple actions with the same object. So you don't have to keep on typing in this dot on action, this dot, or client dot on action, client dot on action, and so on and so on. Instead, we can just pass in an object which will have all of those handlers already a part of it. Okay, so let's move that off to the side. If you go ahead and add that to your code, move this off to the side. How do you use that? Well, it's simple. Client on actions, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a object, and I'm going to say users colon list colon goes into, and I'm going to say return this users list. And that's our users list. And if I wanted to do something else, like, I don't know, I'll leave this in here, like auth login goes into name, or is equal to name, and then something like auth logout. Now remember, use arrow functions. If you do not use arrow functions here, you will have a bad time, because your this won't be bound to the right this. It won't be bound to the actual module itself. It will be bound to nothing. But this is basically how we can quickly and very readably add in a bunch of the client API in one fell swoop. All right, I am going to get rid of that parameter there just because ESLint is going to throw a fit about it. Okay, so that's our users module so far. Very, very straightforward. So how do we use this? Well, let's go ahead and just test it out in our application. So let's go into client application.js, and right here I'm going to say I don't know, after we bootstrap, let's just go ahead and say services.server emit action users list, and then we'll subscribe to that and go users goes into console log users. And with that, we should get an awesome, in our console, an awesome list of users. And we do, and we see that they have the correct values for their color. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing in this video. In the next video, we are going to work on building a store for our users where we can deal with listing, adding, removing, and all that fun stuff. And we'll see you guys then.